What if I told you there's a place on Earth where sound simply dies? Where voices enter but never return? Where even the wind refuses to whisper? Today, we're diving into one of the most disturbing geographical anomalies ever documented, a forest in northern Romania that has been consuming human voices for over 4 centuries. In 1860, Professor Constantin Moldovan from the University of Cluj received a letter that would haunt him for the rest of his life. A local shepherd named Gheorghe Popescu wrote about his missing daughter, but it wasn't an ordinary disappearance. The girl had walked into what locals called Pădurea Tăcută, silent forest, and while her footprints were found leading in, no trace of her was ever found coming out. But here's where it gets truly unsettling. Witnesses claimed they could hear her voice, calling from deep within the forest for 3 consecutive nights. But each night, her cries grew fainter until they vanished completely. Moldovan was a skeptical man of science, but the letter contained something that made his blood run cold. Enclosed was a detailed map showing the exact locations where 23 other people had disappeared over the past 2 centuries, all following the same pattern. Voices heard for days, gradually fading into nothingness. The forest itself defies logic. Covering roughly 12 square kilometers in the Carpathian foothills, it appears normal from the outside. Dense pine and oak trees, typical Eastern European wildlife, nothing that should concern a casual hiker. But step 50 meters inside, and you enter a realm where physics seems to break down. Local records dating back to 1612 tell of Ottoman soldiers who entered the forest during their retreat from the Battle of Tarnava. According to surviving accounts, the unit's commander could be heard shouting orders from within the tree line for over a week. But when rescue parties entered to extract them, they found only empty uniforms arranged in perfect military formation around cold campfires. The soldiers were never found. Professor Moldovan assembled the first scientific expedition to study the phenomenon in 1868. His team included 2 acoustic specialists, a botanist, and a photographer. Their journals, discovered in the university archives decades later, paint a picture of growing horror as they documented their findings. On the first day, they established a base camp just outside the forest boundary. The acoustic specialists, Dr. Emil Vasilescu, and his assistant, began their measurements using the most advanced sound equipment available at the time. They recorded their voices at various distances from the forest edge and noted something impossible. Sound waves simply stopped propagating beyond a certain point, as if hitting an invisible wall. Dr. Vasilescu's journal entry from the second day reads, "We have discovered something that challenges everything we understand about acoustic physics. When we shout into the forest, our voices travel approximately 40 meters before vanishing completely. Not echoing back, not fading gradually, simply ceasing to exist. It's as if the air itself becomes solid beyond that point." But the real terror began on the 3rd night. The team was awakened by what sounded like dozens of voices calling from various points within the forest. Men, women, children, all speaking different languages, some in archaic dialects that hadn't been used for centuries. Dr. Vasilescu recognized Ottoman Turkish, medieval Hungarian, and what he believed to be Latin. But here's what made it truly horrifying. The voices were all calling for help, repeating the same phrases over and over, like a broken phonograph. The botanist, Dr. Maria Petrescu, made an equally disturbing discovery. The trees near the boundary grew in unnatural formations, their branches twisted into spirals that seemed to funnel inward toward the forest's center. More unsettling was her finding that the deeper they went, the older the trees became. Not just older than the surrounding forest, but older than they should logically be able to survive. Carbon dating of fallen branches would later suggest some trees were over 800 years old. Despite the species' typical lifespan of 300 years, the photographer, Anton Georgescu, captured images that would later be dismissed by the academic community as hoaxes or camera malfunctions. His photographs showed what appeared to be human silhouettes standing among the trees, always just at the edge of visibility. When enlarged, these figures seemed to have their mouths open. in perpetual screams, though no sound accompanied them. On the fourth day, Dr. Vasilescu made a decision that would seal his fate. Against Moldovan's direct orders, he ventured beyond the 40-meter sound barrier, carrying a string tied to a tree at the boundary to ensure he could find his way back. The team watched as he walked deeper into the forest, his figure gradually becoming obscured by the unnaturally thick canopy. For 6 hours, they waited. Then, as the sun began to set, they heard his voice. But something was wrong. Dr. Vasilescu was calling for help, but his voice seemed to be coming from multiple directions. Simultaneously, sometimes it sounded close, sometimes distant, but always with the same desperate tone. The team tried to follow the voice, but each time they approached where it seemed to originate, the sound would shift to another location. This continued for 3 days. Dr. Vasilescu's voice grew weaker, but never stopped completely. On the 7th day of the expedition, his voice joined the chorus of other trapped souls, calling out in an endless loop that would continue for decades to come. Professor Moldovan ordered the immediate evacuation of the remaining team. His final report, filed with the university and subsequently buried in their archives, concluded with a recommendation that the area be declared forbidden to human entry. But bureaucracy is slow, and curious locals continued to disappear. In 1912, a team of German researchers, led by Dr. Heinrich Weber, attempted to solve the mystery using early recording equipment. They set up a series of phonographs at regular intervals leading into the forest, hoping to map exactly where and how sound disappeared. Their recordings, discovered years later, captured something that defied explanation. The phonographs closest to the forest boundary recorded normal forest sounds, wind through leaves, bird calls, the researchers' voices. But the devices placed deeper within the forest captured something else entirely. Layered beneath the natural sounds was a constant murmur of human voices. Hundreds of them, all speaking at once in a cacophony of languages and time periods. Audio analysis revealed voices speaking in languages that predated recorded history in the region. Dr. Weber's final recording, made from a phonograph placed at what he calculated to be the forest's acoustic center, captured only one sound: low rhythmic humming that seemed to pulse like a massive heartbeat. When played back at different speeds, the humming resolved into what sounded like thousands of voices harmonizing in an unknown language. The German team met the same fate as their predecessors. Dr. Weber's voice joined the eternal chorus, though his contribution was different. Unlike the others who called for help, Weber's trapped voice seemed to be trying to warn people away, repeating, "Get nicht hinein, don't go in," in an endless loop that visitors would report hearing well into the 20th century world. War I and II brought temporary respites from the forest's appetite. The area was too remote for military significance, and local populations were more concerned with survival than exploration. But the forest waited, patient and hungry. In 1954, during the early years of communist Romania, a state geological survey team was sent to assess the area for potential mining operations. The team leader, engineer Radu Munteanu, approached the forest with typical bureaucratic confidence, dismissing local superstitions as peasant nonsense. The survey team's equipment included early seismic sensors, designed to map underground structures that might contain valuable minerals. What they discovered beneath the forest was far more disturbing than any folktale. The seismic readings showed a massive underground chamber system, stretching for kilometers beneath the forest floor. The chambers were arranged in a perfect spiral pattern, converging on a central void that the equipment couldn't measure. More unsettling was the discovery that these chambers were filled with something. The seismic waves suggested a liquid medium, but one that moved in regular pulsing patterns. Engineer Munteanu described it in his report as geological breathing, as if the earth itself was alive beneath the forest. The team's final transmission, recorded by state radio operators, captured Munteanu's increasingly frantic voice as he reported their findings. The transmission cut off mid-sentence as Munteanu was describing something moving beneath us, something massive. His voice would later join the forest's collection, though uniquely, it seemed to maintain some awareness of the modern world, sometimes broadcasting fragmentary radio signals that included references to contemporary events. The communist government sealed all records of the incident and declared the area a restricted nature preserve. For 30 years, the forest remained largely undisturbed, its growing collection of voices creating an increasingly complex symphony of the damned. The modern era brought new technology and new victims. In 1985, a team of acoustic researchers from the Technical University of Bucharest attempted to study the phenomenon using computer-aided sound analysis. Their equipment detected something that previous generations couldn't have measured. The trapped voices weren't random. They were organized into harmonic patterns that suggested intelligence, purpose, and most disturbing of all, growth. Dr. Andreea Constantinescu, the team leader, discovered that the voice patterns had evolved over the centuries. The oldest voices, dating back hundreds of years, formed a harmonic foundation, while newer additions layered on top in increasingly complex arrangements. It was as if the forest was composing a vast, multi-century musical piece using human voices as instruments. Her team's analysis revealed that the forest showed preferences for certain types of voices. Trained singers, musicians, and people with particularly strong or distinctive voices seemed to be incorporated more prominently into the overall composition. This led to a horrifying realization. The forest wasn't randomly trapping people. It was actively selecting voices to enhance its eternal symphony. Dr. Constantinescu's final recording, made from deep within the forest using portable equipment, captured her own voice describing what she saw in the forest's heart. According to her final transmission, the trees themselves were hollow, their trunks serving as resonance chambers that amplified and preserved the trapped voices. At the center of the forest, she described finding a massive tree, ancient beyond measure, whose hollow trunk contained what appeared to be a vast organic amplification system. Her voice, when it joined the others, brought a new element to the forest's composition. As a trained musicologist, her trapped consciousness seemed to be attempting to conduct the other voices, organizing them into increasingly sophisticated harmonies that visitors describe as both beautiful and utterly terrifying. The fall of communism in 1989 brought international attention to many previously secret locations, but the Romanian government maintained strict control over information about the silent forest. However, the rise of the internet age brought new risks and new victims. In 2003, a group of urban explorers from Germany discovered references to the forest in leaked government documents. Armed with GPS devices and digital recording equipment, they became the first people to attempt a systematic mapping of the forest's interior. Their blog posts, recovered from archived internet pages, provide the most detailed modern account of conditions within the forest. The explorers, calling themselves Die Stimmen Sammler, the voice collectors, documented their journey with unprecedented detail. Their GPS devices functioned normally until they reached approximately the same 40-meter boundary that Professor Moldovan had identified over a century earlier. Beyond that point, the devices registered their location as undefined, as if they had stepped outside normal space-time coordinates. Their digital recorders captured something that analog equipment had missed. The trapped voices were responding to their presence. As they moved deeper into the forest, the intensity and urgency of the voices increased. More disturbing was their discovery that the voices seemed to be trying to communicate specific information, as if the trapped souls retained some awareness and were attempting to warn the new arrivals. The group's final blog post, uploaded automatically by a scheduled posting system, contained audio files that were analyzed by sound engineers across the internet. The recordings revealed that the forest's acoustic properties had continued to evolve. The boundary of sound absorption had expanded, now reaching nearly 60 meters from the forest edge. The voice collection had grown more sophisticated, with trapped souls apparently able to coordinate their calls to create complex warning messages. Most chilling was the final recording from the group's leader, Marcus Weber, coincidentally sharing a surname with the German researcher from 1912. His last transmission described finding the remains of previous expeditions arranged in ritualistic patterns around the central tree. The bones were arranged to form acoustic amplification chambers, as if the forest had incorporated even the physical remains of its victims into its sound processing system. The German explorers' voices added a modern element to the forest's composition. Their trapped souls seemed to retain access to contemporary knowledge, occasionally broadcasting fragmentary information about current events, weather patterns, and even internet memes. Visitors in the years following reported hearing distorted fragments of popular songs and movie quotes echoing from the forest depths. In 2010, the Romanian government was forced to acknowledge the forest's existence when satellite imagery began showing the area in detail on commercial mapping services. Rather than revealing the truth, they classified it as a unique acoustic research preserve and established a 5-kilometer exclusion zone around the forest boundary. But exclusion zones only serve to attract the curious. The advent of social media brought a new type of victim: influencers and content creators seeking viral content. In 2015, a popular YouTube explorer named David Morrison attempted to create a documentary about the forest. His livestream, watched by over 50,000 viewers, provided real-time documentation of his descent into the forest's embrace. Morrison's stream began normally, with him explaining the local legends and dismissing them as folklore. But as he crossed the sound boundary, his viewers began reporting audio anomalies in the stream. Comments flooded in describing voices speaking in languages other than English. Even though Morrison was clearly speaking normally on camera, the stream continued for over 4 hours, during which Morrison appeared to be walking in circles, though he believed he was moving deeper into the forest. His GPS showed impossible readings, placing him simultaneously at multiple locations. Most disturbing was the gradual change in his behavior. He began responding to voices that weren't audible to his stream viewers, carrying on conversations with unseen entities. Morrison's final coherent statement, before his voice joined the eternal collection, was a warning to his viewers. It's not just trapping voices, it's collecting consciousness. Everyone who ever spoken here is still here, still aware, still trying to get out. The livestream continued for another 6 hours after Morrison's disappearance, showing only the forest canopy swaying in a wind that made no sound. But the audio track continued to broadcast, and listeners around the world reported hearing Morrison's voice begin to harmonize with the ancient chorus, his modern inflections gradually conforming to the forest's eternal composition. The stream was eventually taken down by YouTube, but not before thousands of copies were downloaded and shared across the internet. Audio analysis of these recordings revealed that Morrison's voice wasn't simply added to the collection, it was actively being modified, processed by whatever intelligence controlled the forest to fit into its grand design. Today, the silent forest remains active, its appetite undiminished by centuries of feeding. Local authorities report that the exclusion zone has been breached dozens of times by thrill seekers, researchers, and the simply curious. None have returned, but all have contributed their voices to the growing symphony. Recent satellite analysis suggests that the forest is expanding. The area of sound absorption has grown steadily over the decades, incorporating larger sections of the surrounding woodland. Trees beyond the original boundary have begun showing the same twisted growth patterns, suggesting that whatever force controls the forest is spreading its influence. More disturbing are reports from pilots flying over the region. Aircraft passengers have reported hearing faint voices coming through the plane's communication systems when passing over the forest, even at altitudes of 10,000 meters. These voices speak in dozens of languages, all carrying the same message, a warning to stay away, mixed with desperate pleas for help that can never come. The forest's latest victims include a scientific expedition from the Max Planck Institute. In 2020, just before the pandemic forced a temporary reduction in international research, the German team brought sophisticated quantum sensors, hoping to understand the physical mechanism behind the forest's acoustic properties. Their final transmission described detecting massive quantum fluctuations centered on the forest's heart, as if reality itself was being manipulated on a subatomic level. Dr. Ingrid Hoffman, the team leader, reported that their quantum sensors suggested the forest existed in a state of temporal flux, with time flowing differently within its boundaries. This would explain why voices from different centuries could coexist and interact, and why the forest's consciousness seemed to accumulate knowledge across decades while maintaining awareness of current events. Her voice, when it joined the collection, brought with it fragments of quantum physics equations and descriptions of higher dimensional mathematics. Visitors now report hearing what sounds like lectures on advanced physics echoing from the forest depths. As if Dr. Hoffman's trapped consciousness continues her research from within her acoustic prison. So what is the silent forest? Current theories range from the scientific to the supernatural. Some researchers suggest it's a unique geological formation that creates perfect acoustic absorption conditions. Others propose that it's a temporal anomaly, a place where past, present, and future intersect in ways that trap human consciousness. The most disturbing theory, proposed by Dr. Sarah Mitchell from Cambridge University, suggests that the forest is a form of biological computing system. According to her hypothesis, the underground chamber system discovered by the Romanian survey team forms a vast biological processor, using trapped human consciousness as processing units in a calculation that has been running for centuries. This would explain the forest's apparent intelligence, its ability to select specific types of voices, and its gradual evolution over time. If Dr. Mitchell is correct, then the forest isn't simply trapping people, it's incorporating their minds into a vast organic computer, whose purpose remains unknown. The most recent addition to the forest's collection was Maria Santos, a Portuguese acoustic researcher who entered the forest in 2023, despite international warnings. Her voice, speaking in perfect Portuguese, has been reported by visitors as attempting to coordinate the other trapped souls in what sounds like an escape attempt. Her modern understanding of acoustic engineering seems to be helping the collective consciousness organize itself more effectively. Whether this represents hope for the trapped souls or a new level of horror remains to be seen. Some recent visitors report that the voices have begun synchronizing their calls, creating acoustic patterns that seem designed to breach the forest's boundaries. If the trapped consciousness has found a way to reverse engineer their prison, the implications for the outside world could be catastrophic. The silent forest stands today as a monument to human curiosity and its consequences. Over 400 documented victims have contributed their voices to its eternal symphony, creating a musical composition of horror that spans centuries and languages. Each voice tells a story of discovery turned to tragedy, of scientific inquiry transformed into acoustic imprisonment. As our understanding of physics and consciousness advances, the forest's true nature may eventually be revealed. But until then, it continues its patient collection, waiting for the next curious soul to cross its threshold and add their voice to the greatest horror symphony ever composed. The forest that swallowed sound continues to hunger, and somewhere in its depths, hundreds of voices continue their eternal call, warning others away, while secretly hoping for the company that new arrivals would bring. Because in the silent forest, the only thing worse than being trapped forever is being trapped forever alone. Remember, some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, some places are meant to be left undisturbed, and some sounds, once silenced, should never be allowed to speak again. The next time you find yourself in a forest where the birds have stopped singing and your voice seems to die just beyond your lips, remember the lesson of Perdura Tasseri. Turn back while you still can, because once the forest claims your voice, you become part of its eternal composition, forever calling warnings that no one will ever heed.